So this supporter's comment outside of former President Donald Trump's rally in Des Moines, Iowa, went viral over the weekend, prompting civil war to ominously trend on Twitter.
We're just sick of it, and we're not gonna take it anymore. I see a civil war coming. I do. I see civil war coming.
This comes as House Minority Whip Steve Scalise balked when Fox's Chris Wallace pressed him to concede that the 2020 election was not stolen from Trump.
Do you think that hurts, undermines American democracy?
Well, Chris, I've been very clear from the beginning. If you look at a number of states, they didn't follow their state-passed laws that govern the election for president. That is what the United States Constitution says. They don't say that the states determine what the rules are. They say the state legislatures determine the rules.
But the states all certified.
They didn't follow those state legislative.
The states all certified.
They didn't follow those legislative rules. Right, but at the end of the day, are we going to follow what the Constitution says or not? I hope we get back to what the Constitution says, but clearly in a number of states, they didn't follow those legislatively set rules.
So you think the election was stolen?
What I said is there are states that didn't follow their legislatively set rules. That's what the United States Constitution says.
A recent survey from the University of Chicago reveals that over 47 million Americans, or 1 in 5, believe Joe Biden's presidency is illegitimate, while nearly half believe use of force is justified to restore Trump to power. Team Rising is here to break it all down. Joining us now are Roger Fisk, Democratic strategist and Obama administration alum, and Keith Naughton, principal at Silent Majority Strategies. Welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Roger, I'll start with you. I kind of think politics has become a form of entertainment and almost a form of sports now. So people, I don't know how seriously to take people when they say there's going to be a civil war, there should be political violence. It kind of sounds like unserious cheerleading to me, but should I be more concerned than that?
Well, first off, good morning, Robbie and Kim, and thank you for having me on with Keith. What grabbed me about that clip is just kind of this casual nature of how easily something like this is said. And we should be concerned for a couple of reasons. One, the numbers that you talked about. I mean, I think you could have done a survey at any point in American history and found 4, 5, 6, 8% that had some level of grievance that would justify talk of secession and things like that. But these are some serious numbers. I do think there's a pop culture element to it, which is there's a needling component to it. There's a shock value component, and there's a desire to poke at the quote unquote elites or whatever. What I'd be curious about if I had a conversation with this woman is what exactly is it? Because it can be Antifa, it can be 5G, it can be the vaccine, it can be Trump's claims about the elections. Like, these are very broad and vague buckets of grievances. So I think it does need to be paid attention to. At the same time, I don't think we should be catering to it. I think it should be called out, and I think it should be subject to public ridicule, frankly. But that said, it is a real component of how 15, 20% of the people in the country feel, and I think we need to take it seriously.
Yeah, but this isn't really anything new. I mean, when you go back in time and you look at even starting with the Bill Clinton presidency, a lot of people found that to be illegitimate because of the three-way tie between him, George H.W. Bush, and Ross Perot. And then there's, of course, George Bush and Al Gore and the whole hanging Chads debacle in Florida. And then, of course, you go into Obama and the birthergate, and then you go into Trump, and you've got people. I mean, in Trump, there were plenty of. The polls during the Trump presidency showed that it was also about 18 to 20% of people who did not find him to be the legitimate president of the United States. There were numerous attempts to impeach him. I mean, is this really anything new, Keith? Do you think this is a heightened reason to be alarmed, or do you feel like this is just par for the course for the last 5 presidents?
Well, I think in politics, the next group pushes the envelope more than the previous group. And I think in your shot with Chris Wallace, I think, was that Scalise up there? I think he was doing his impression of Terry McAuliffe trying to evade accepting George Bush as having won in 2004. So I think this is really just a lot of hyperbole. And I think that news, like Robbie said, has become a lot of entertainment. So we're trying to push the envelope, and we're trying to create the next thing that gets people more interested, the next bit of hyperbole that drives clicks and that drives views, and people become very casual about it. I think people in other countries who see someone talking about a civil war in the United States laugh about it because we've got no concept of what that really means.
Right.
I think what we've got is people who are angry and they're just reaching for language they don't fully understand. And that's easy to gang up on the media, but I think it's worthwhile at this point because I think that we've got a media that's in niches and they throw gasoline on this and encourage it.
Whenever somebody says there's
it.
about to be a civil war, I try to say, well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like who is going to be fighting this? Do you mean like the Proud Boys and Antifa? Well, I guess they're kind of having like a civil war in the Pacific Northwest, but it doesn't concern the vast majority of us. But a new Pew Research survey found that 67% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents said they would like to see Trump continue to be a major political figure for many years to come, while 44% want to see the former president run again in 2024. Now, on the other hand, 22% of those respondents would prefer to support a different candidate who held views that aligned with the beliefs of the former president, and about a third of Republicans, or 32%, said they would not like for Trump to maintain his status as a major political figure, according to the survey. Despite enthusiasm for Trump among voters, the former president is not as popular in the Senate, where new reporting from The Hill reveals that Senate Republicans, with a few exceptions, are hoping that former president stays mum on 2024, especially ahead of midterms. These GOP senators are worried an announcement could sink their chances of taking back the Senate in 2022. Probably half of them want to run for president anyway. So, Roger, Trump is this. He's a gift, obviously, if he endorses you in a tough primary battle against an opponent. But nobody, even if they want his ideas, a lot of people don't want him in the race, politically speaking. But then a lot of the voters do. So how are Republicans going to navigate this?
I trust you mean the hypothetical you, because I don't think the former president's going to be endorsing me anytime soon. That said, very quickly on the last point, we need to remember that when we look back at the flashpoints in American history, it's not like the shelling of Fort Sumter just happened in a vacuum, right? Like I'm in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia right now, and the raid that John Brown conducted was kind of the embryonic kind of kindling of the abolitionist movement, just as we can look at the American Revolution. And someday historians might look back and look at the attempt to kidnap the governor of Michigan, the storming of the Capitol, et cetera. And then, we could be in a very different position when we look back at this. To speak specifically to your question of just moments ago, the Republican senators, all they have to look at, or any elected official, is look at Fabrizio's post-mortem of the 2020 election, and that is President Trump's pollster. And the evidence proved very, very clearly that it was his erratic, unhinged, kind of delusional behavior that alienated educated, suburban, middle-class families. And further, that same poll proved that if President Trump had never said the word Georgia and had never gone to Georgia, the Republicans would still hold the Senate. Fabrizio's postmortem proves very, very clearly that President Trump went down there and personally lost those 2 seats by going down with all his kind of delusional fever dreams. And people looked at that and just said, this is so erratic. There's no stability. There's no coherence here. And I don't trust my kid's future to someone who's, obsessed with these bizarre schemes that they're the constant champion and the victim in. So that's why I think Senate Republicans think that. But the broader GOP base, it's still an emotional itch that he scratches, right? And that's why I think you see the disconnect between the Senate Republicans and the folks on the potential caucus goers in Iowa.
Yeah, right? I definitely don't really think I want to see Trump coming back into office. I mean, at this point, the country is so divided as it is that I worry that a resurgence of Trump would just divide the country even further. And I would like to see us actually get to a point of some sort of healing from this sort of divide. But, Keith, I want to ask you, do you think that if Trump were to come back and, and I think it's if he were to run, I do think he'd probably get that primary nomination. Do you think that this would further divide the country more so than it is? Or do you think this would be, I mean, what do you see happening in the future here, Keith?
I don't think you're going to see things more divided than they are now. But look, these polling numbers are a mixed bag for Trump, and I'll give myself a little endorsement here. I've been writing about this all year, and in June, I'd said Trump is going to run, or at least he intends on running. But his numbers aren't really that great. His approval amongst Republicans is in the upper 70s and low 80s, and yet his I want to run number is 40 points under that. So pretty clearly, a lot of Republicans, a majority of Republicans, recognize that he's a problem, and they don't really want him to run. I mean, they agree with his policies, and he's kind of this representational figure of what they're angry about. So he kind of is this receptacle of all these annoyances that people are dealing with and problems in their lives and so forth. The good news for Trump is, if he hangs on to 40 to 44%, the way that Republican primaries are set up with a very heavy winner-take-all structure, he'll win the nomination because the Republican system pushes things towards a decision. And as we saw in 2020, even when people on the Republican Party oppose him, it still fractures. I mean, he had four nobodies running against him instead of them coalescing around somebody. And I would expect that this next time. I mean, if he wants that nomination, he can probably get it. The reason why he wouldn't run is if he thinks he's going to lose to Biden again, because I think that would be intolerable to him. If he thinks he could lose, he'll fake up some excuse. He already planted the seed with that, saying he's going to be older and what about my health? I mean, he'll pretend to have a heart attack and that'll be out. That'll be it for him. But if he thinks he can win, he's going to run.
Yeah, I agree with that analysis. If he thinks he can be president, if there's a good chance, I think he's going for it. Thank you both for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Hill reporter Raphael Bernal joins us to discuss the state of U.S.-Haiti relations when Rising returns. Stick with us.